Hello, and let me add my welcome to Ben's, welcome to Grace Church Greenwich. Nice to see some old faces back and some new people, and I'd love to meet you at the end. My name's Andrew, one of the pastors here, and ordinarily we have a reading before our sermon. Sometimes we have two readings. Today we have no reading because the sermon is the reading, but you'll need to get your Bible open at page 228 in the church Bibles. It's 1 Samuel chapter 5. And we're picking up the story from last week where we left it. And we're going to read all of chapter 5, all of chapter 6, and the beginning of chapter 7. And it's a really, really exciting story. So I'm sure it's going to grip your attention. But first, I've got a prop. And Tom's slightly stolen my thunder here with the children's talk. But I was going to ask you what this is. And some of you know this as, is it called a Roxas or something? I haven't memorized all the IKEA names for sort of Swedish names or made-up names for different cheap furniture. But for our purposes today, it's quite easy to make. This is about the limit of my IKEA skills, actually. The ones that have the Allen keys, I hate. This is easy enough. For the purposes of today, this is what? It's the ark, yeah. It's not really quite accurate for the ark, because the ark isn't a cube, it's a sort of cuboid, slightly longer than it is tall. And of course, the ark is a bit bigger than this. It's sort of more that sort of size. And it has, it's covered in gold, which this isn't. That would be too expensive for IKEA. And it's got the cherubim on top, on the mercy seat, that symbolizes the throne of God. And inside the ark, does anyone know what's in this side? There's nothing, but in the real ark, there would be what? The Ten Commandments. Yeah, the original copy of the Ten Commandments. So written with God's actual finger on 2 tablets of stone, symbolizing the relationship between God and his people. The God who'd rescued them out of Egypt, brought them to Mount Sinai. He said, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods but me. And that was inside. So a box bigger than this, covered in gold, the Ten Commandments inside, loops on the side to carry it with poles. This was the ark. And it's become quite famous, even in popular culture, mainly thanks to da-da-da-da, da-da-da. Da, 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 da. If you are too old to know what that means, then I'm sorry for you. This was a classic film in my childhood, Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. They made another sort of dubious Indiana Jones films recently. Harrison Ford is so old, but he managed to still do just one more. But one of the original films, a fantastic film, and it's all based on this. And we'll come actually to that film a little bit later in the talk. But here's an ark. And I'm going to put it on there, which is the temple. And we're going to pick up the story in 1 Samuel chapter 5, verse 1. But here's the question, really, for the whole sermon. And it's on the front of the order of service. It was our theme verse. It's the key question of the chapter. It comes at the end, actually, at the climax. Here's the question. Who can stand before this holy God? And so as I've been talking about the ark, and I've sort of slightly irreverently represented it with an IKEA box. But if you can imagine that as the real ark, we all ought to be quite scared. We all ought to be trembling. And this should be the question in our minds. If this is the presence of God amongst us, who can stand? And it might be that that's not our question. As we gather, maybe we come to church before the Lord quite casually. It's just what I do on a Sunday morning. I just rock up and see my friends and have some cake afterwards, and we'll sing some songs and it'll be fun. Maybe without that sense of trembling before God. That's true of me. I can be, just go about the routine. I actually was talking to Ben, who was leading the service. When would I see you? On Wednesday. And Ben was preparing for leading. He said it's quite a weighty one this Sunday. And I want to really give it the time just to prepare for this question, who can stand? That's going to be the question. And if it's not currently your question, well, it might be, and this is really last week's sermon, but it might be that our view of God is kind of like a genie. I don't mean like literally that you rub a lamp and expect the genie to appear and you ask your wishes, but I mean God's kind of there to do the things I need him to do. He's there for my benefit. He's there to sort of religiously rubber stamp the things I was going to do anyway. And so I make my career plans, and then as a Christian, I expect God to bless my career plans. And I do my sort of personal exercise, but as a Christian, I expect God to bless my health. And I date somebody, but as a Christian, I expect God to bless my romantic life. And God's there just to sort of provide a spiritual rubber stamp on my plans. And that's how the Israelites were treating God, and it's how they were treating the ark. So last week there was a battle, and they went into battle and they lost against the Philistines. They weren't expecting to lose. It was a bit of a shock. But then they came up with a brilliant idea. Let's take the ark. Because after all, this is a very special thing, right? This is where it symbolizes God's presence amongst us. It symbolizes God's promises to us. The Ten Commandments are inside it. It's covered in gold. Let's take this into battle as our secret weapon. And if you were here last week, you'll know the shock was they took the ark and they still lost. Chapter 4 of 1 Samuel. That's the backstory. That's the previously in 1 Samuel. If you were watching the Netflix set and you missed last week, you need to know this lost and this got captured and it got taken by the Philistines and it got put into the house of Dagon, their god. Now, I want you to imagine yourself back in those days. What do you think theologically, what do you think about God after chapter 4? After last week's sermon, right? They go into battle with the ark and they lose. And it's not just they lose, it looks like the ark loses because the Philistines capture the ark. So you think to yourself, well, God's not that powerful then, is he? I mean, the Philistines must be more powerful than God is because they won. You know, you don't look at the underdog and say, well, they won really, in a technicality. It looks like God lost. It looks like Dagon won. So when you got a battle between God and a pagan god, or God and the secular gods, or God and our culture, or whatever, and when Christianity loses, you might conclude, oh, God's not as powerful then. Now, that's certainly the battle in our world today, isn't it? Is Christianity less powerful than Islam? Because we lost in certain areas in the Middle East, in North Africa, in parts of London today. Is Christianity less powerful than secularism, than atheism? Because we're losing. Look at the universities and the schools and the media, and Christians always misrepresented. The church in decline. If the church is in decline, does that mean God's in decline? Does that mean God's less powerful? Now, that's what you might be thinking after chapter 4. And actually, there was another reason why they lost, namely that God wasn't willing to be treated as a genie. So when they tried to just harness him for their good as a sort of spiritual lucky charm, God wasn't up for that. And so they lost. But, you might be wondering. So and here we are at the beginning of chapter 5. We've already heard this first scene in the children's talk, but I'm going to recap it. So chapter 5, verse 1. When the Philistines captured the ark of God, they brought it from Ebenezer to Ashdod in the Philistine territory. Then the Philistines took the ark of God and put it in the house of Dagon and set it up besides Dagon. Now, what they're doing here, they're kind of saying, let's appropriate this Christian, Jewish God and assimilate it with our own God. So they've got a temple, it's got Dagon. There's always a bit of room in here, actually, because we could have Dagon over there, we could have this ark over there. This is basically the pagan instinct, isn't it? You don't necessarily dismiss other religions, you just collect them. Or have a little bit of Hinduism, have a little bit of Buddhism, and mix it in with a little dose of Judaism. I mean, it's very contemporary, actually. People do this nowadays. What's your religion? Well, I've just sort of... That's what they're doing. They're getting a bit of ark next to a bit of Dagon. So they set it up in their temple. And when the people of Ashdod rose early in the next day, I love the way Tom did this. Go to sleep now, close your eyes. It sounds like a game of Mafia, doesn't it? And you open your eyes and Dagon is dead. Dagon, he's not just that he's fallen over, actually, but he's fallen over face forward. But it's like Dagon is worshipping Yahweh, the true God. And so, of course, they come up the next day, as Tom said, and they think, maybe it just blew over and it's an accident, and so they set it back up again. But when they rose the next morning, behold, Dagon had fallen face downwards on the ground before the ark of the Lord, and the head of Dagon and both his hands were lying cut off on the threshold. Only the trunk of Dagon was left to him. It's an interesting feature in all of 1 and 2 Samuel, actually, that the baddies always lose their head. It's a sort of, I don't know whether the French Revolution got the idea from 1 Samuel, but sometimes people in Samuel, they esteem those who are high. And that's often the human thing, isn't it? Those who are tall or those who are powerful or those who look impressive. In Hannah's prayer, if you remember that all the way back in chapter 2, Hannah says to Peninnah, talk no more so very high, literally. And those who are high always get brought lower. And often they do that by losing their head. So last week, 2 weeks ago, Eli lost his head. He fell over. Today, Dagon loses his head. Anyone think of any other heads that get chopped off in 1 and 2 Samuel? Goliath, famously, David and Goliath, he loses his head. Absalom loses his head. He gets his head stuck in a tree. Anyway, there we are. Dagon is the one here. He loses his head. He's lying, just his trunk left to him. And then verse 5, that's why the priests of Dagon and all who enter the house of Dagon do not tread on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod to this day. So there's this sort of superstition that they walk along, and then when they get to the threshold, they sort of jump over it. And why are they doing this weird thing? Oh, because that's the place where Dagon died. Why are you still superstitiously commemorating a god who lost? He's obviously not the real thing. But anyway, these sort of traditions are preserved. Dagon, nil. Ark 1. Scene 2, verse 6. The hand of the Lord was heavy against the people of Ashdod, and he terrified and afflicted them with tumors, both Ashdod and its territory. When the men of Ashdod saw how things were, they said, the ark of the God of Israel must not remain with us, for his hand is hard against us and against Dagon our God. So they sent and gathered together all the lords of the Philistines and said, what shall we do with the ark of the God of Israel? They answered, let the ark of the God of Israel be brought around to Gath. Okay, so it comes to Ashdod. So here it is in the temple of Dagon. And all the people of Ashdod, let's say that's the front row, start to get very, very ill. I guess they get cancer. They get tumors. Extra growths appear on their bodies. And they figure out it's because of the ark of God. This is a powerful thing. What shall we do about it? So here they are. Janice, you can have the ark of God. Janice is getting very ill, and so is the other people in the front row, Kevin and Hang and so on. What should we do? They have this brilliant idea. I know. Let's send it down the road to Gath. Do you want to pass it back to Gath? This is excellent, isn't it? It's like, thanks, guys. Cheers for that. It's like pass the parcel. And so what happens next? So they brought the ark of God to Gath. But verse 9, after they brought it round, the hand of the Lord was against that city, causing a very great panic. He afflicted the men of the city, both young and old, so that tumors broke out on them. So what do? They sent the ark of God to Ekron. Thanks, guys. Cheers. It's really helpful. And the people of Ekron cried out. Do you want to cry out? Verse 10. That's excellent. And you have to cry it in the words of verse 10 as well. So we haven't prepared anyone for this. So Elena is rolling with it. Thank you. They therefore sent and gathered together all the lords of the Philistines and said, send away the ark of the God of Israel and let it return to its own place, that it may not kill us and our people. There was a deathly panic throughout the whole city. The hand of God was very heavy there. The men who didn't die were struck with tumors. The cry of the city went up to heaven. There's a pun here in Hebrew, because the word in Hebrew for heavy is the word kavod. It also means holy, glorious. God's hand is sort of weighty there. Because they thought it was just a gold box from IKEA. Just a thing to collect in our collection of religious objects. And it was It was nothing. Maybe it will be good as a good luck charm, like a genie. And it turns out, no, this is a God who's against us. He's dangerous. He can win. Now, you see, this is really, really important for us to learn on the back of chapter 4. Because maybe in chapter 4, we thought, oh, God's not very powerful. Now, that isn't the right answer at all. Now, the reason the ark was captured is because God wasn't up for being treated like a genie by the Israelites. It didn't mean he wasn't powerful. He can fight his enemies, and they panic. They're terrified. It's a bit like that today, isn't it? The Church of England's in massive decline. Why is that? Is God not quite up to it anymore? No, just God isn't up for being misused by a denomination. He's not up to have his name taken in vain. And so he won't bless it. And so the church declines. It doesn't mean God's not powerful, though. 1 Samuel chapter 5. The ark of God, chapter 6, the ark of the Lord was in the country of the Philistines for 7 months. And the Philistines called for the priests and the diviners and said, what shall we do with the ark of the Lord? Tell us with what we shall send it to its place. They said, okay, now you've got to tune into this. This is Philistine theologians and priests and diviners, sort of clairvoyants and occult people, giving their advice. Okay, so we're not to trust these people, right? These are just pagans, and they're basically just improvising, and they come up with some crazy, crazy ideas. But nonetheless, they kind of got the right sense, ironically. So even these people that don't know the true God, that they got the right instincts, they say, don't send it empty, but return him a guilt offering, some kind of sacrifice for your sin, for your guilt, that you might be healed. Oh, good instinct. It's pretty similar, actually, to what we read in the law of Moses that was inside the ark. Although I don't think they opened it to read it they didn't open it to read it because what they then say is a bit like, it's kind of, they're improvising. Verse 4, what is the guilt offering you should return to him? They answered, 5 golden tumors and 5 golden mice. I mean, like, okay, who knows where that is, but you sure? Why not try that? According to the number of the lords of the Philistines, the same plague was on all of you and your lord. You must make images of your tumors and images of your mice. Okay, so what's happened is God's ark's there. He's cursing the people. They're breaking out in these cancerous growths. And the Philistines say, for reasons best known to themselves, according to their pagan religion, why don't you make 3D models of your tumors? Imagine like the ones that you see in formaldehyde jars in a doctor's surgery. This is what we took out of you. Make a gold version of that. And also, I've noticed some mice have been eating your crops. So make some golden mice. I mean, this is not recommended. It's not kind of Christian theology. It's improvised pagan theology. But anyway, let's make some gold stuff and send it to God. Give glory to the God of Israel. Perhaps he will lighten his hand from off you and your God and your land. Why should you harden your hearts as the Egyptians and Pharaoh hardened their hearts? After he dealt severely with them, did he not send the people away and they departed? What book of the Bible are we talking about here? Some of us did it in our Bible overview. The Exodus. The Exodus was another fight between God and a pagan nation. This time it's God versus the Philistines. That time it was God versus the Egyptians. God versus the Egyptians, God won. And the people were released from slavery and they crossed the Red Sea and they became God's people. And that's when they got the Ark of the Covenant with the 10 Commandments in it. So actually God's reputation precedes him. The Philistines know, actually, let's not pick a fight with this God because we know what happened last time. Let's honor him. So they're about to send off all of their golden mice, their golden tumors with the ark. But I love this. Verse 7. Take and prepare a new cart and 2 milk cows on which there's never come a yoke, and yoke the cows to the cart, but take their calves home away from them, and take the ark of the Lord and place it in the cart and put in a box at his side the figures of gold, which you'll return to him as a guilt offering. Send it off and let it go its way, and watch. If it goes up on the way to its own land, to Beth Shemesh, then it is he who's done us this great harm. If not, we shall know that it's not his hand that struck us. It happened to us by coincidence. I have to say, I kind of love these guys, right? These are pagan clairvoyants and soothsayers and whatever, but they're kind of shrewd, aren't they? They're canny. Right? They know there's such a thing as superstition and fake religion. And I guess that's what the pagan says today, isn't it? They say, oh, well, of course, people used to think in the old days that you got ill because of God's judgment and you got better because of God's miracles. But then now we understand it's because of cancer, right? It's because of an error of copying DNA. And people thought you got better by miracles, but now we understand immunoglobulin and helper T cells and the immune system. Bless them, those naive people in the past. So I love this because the Philistines, they're just shrewd than that. They go, well, we think the reason that the people got ill in Ashdod and then in Gath and then in Ekron was because the Ark of the Lord was there. And, the data kind of fits because they're only ill in Ashdod when the Ark's in Ashdod. They're only ill in Gath when the Ark's in Gath. And we think it's because of God, but we can't be sure. So let's do a scientific experiment, okay? Let's check whether it really is God. So what they do is they get some cows that have never been yet. I'm not an expert in plowing with cows, but you get 2 oxen that have never before pulled together. So 2 random cows, you tie them together with a yoke. And then you put on the back of it the ark, plus this box of golden mice and golden tumors. And then you take away their calves. So they go like crazy, these mother cows. And then you see what happens, right? So I'm like, what would happen if it was all just random? I don't know. Maybe the cows would just stampede you. Maybe they go round and round in circles. But they said, if the cows just go in a straight line straight to Israel, then somehow supernaturally these cows know the truth, and then we know it's God. Okay, so it's quite a good test. Let's see what happens. So verse 10, the men did so, and they took 2 milk cows and yoked them to the cart and shut up their calves at home. And they put the ark of the Lord on the cart and the box with the golden mice and the images of the tumors. And the cows went straight in the direction of Beth Shemesh. I can't do the cow. When I did this in the Eltham service, I got 2 of the captains, 2 of the 14-year-olds to beat the 2 cows and to process them down the aisle. But I'm not going to make any of you do that. But anyway, they go all the way straight there without turning as they went, lowing. So all the way. Whoops, there we are. Moo from the PA system. All the way to Beth Shemesh. They turned neither to the right nor the left. The lords of the Philistines went after them as far as the border, just to check. The people of Beth Shemesh were reaping their wheat harvest in the valley, and they lifted up their eyes. And can you just imagine the sight, right? So you're an Israelite. In the last chapter, you lost a massive battle against the Philistines. Loads of you were dead, and you lost the ark, which is the heart of your religion. God's promises to you have gone. And you assume, well, God's abandoned us. And then you look up and you see these 2 random cows mooing, walking towards you in a straight line, carrying the ark, like by themselves. It's like a sort of self-driving car before there were self-driving cars, cow-powered, ark-powered. And they saw the ark, and they rejoiced to see it. They were full of joy to see it. And the field came into the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh and stopped there. A great stone was there. And they split up the wood of the cart and offered the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. I love that. So they turned the whole vehicle into a sacrifice. Basically, the cart itself becomes the firewood. The cows become the burnt offering. The Levites took down the ark of the Lord, the box that was beside it, in which were the golden figures, set up the great stone. The men of Beth Shemesh offered burnt offerings and sacrificed sacrifices on that day to the Lord. This is the correct thing, by the way. So God doesn't actually need golden mice. He wants animal sacrifice. They do that. And when the 5 lords of the Philistines saw it, they returned that day to Ekron. These are the golden tumors that the Philistines returned as a guilt offering to the Lord. 1 for Ashdod, 1 for Gaza, 1 for Ashkelon, 1 for Gath, 1 for Ekron. And the golden mice, according to the number of the cities of the Philistines belonging to the 5 lords, both fortified walls and unwalled villages. The great stone beside which they set down the ark of the Lord is a witness to this day in the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh. Now, I told you I'd talk about that film, The Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Indiana Jones film. A few years ago, when I was working at St Helens Bishopsgate in the City of London, we used to, well, they still do, lunchtime services for business people who work around there. And they get a lot of people who aren't Christians who just sort of pop in. And similarly, you're welcome today. If you're not a Christian and you're looking into it, then we're really grateful to have you. We tried to do kind of lunchtime series, just 20-minute talks in a way that would engage people in their lunch hour. And I did one particular series, and I called it The Bible According to Hollywood. And we basically did a different Bible film each week. And I don't know if you've seen any of these, but we did the Noah film. The Noah film is dreadful. I really don't recommend it. I mean, it's got good CGI. Pretty much the only thing that they get right is that there is an ark and a storm. And everything else, I don't know why they feel that they have to tamper with the story so much. And so the point of the talk was kind of, what's the Noah film say? What does the Bible say? Why are they so different? So it's basically that Hollywood rewrites the Bible in its own image, effectively. So the Noah film is all about the climate catastrophe and eco-warriors. And the idea is we'd be better off without humans, and then the animals will be happy. It's not quite that way in the Bible, but that's the film. And then the next week, there was a guy at St Helens at the time called Francis Annan. He's now quite a successful film director in his own right. And he's a film buff. And he was quite engaged in this series. I said to him, Francis, I've done the Noah film. Next week, I'm doing Exodus, Gods and Kings. I'm hoping it's better. And he shook his head. He said, Sachi, it's worse. And it really is worse. So Exodus, Gods and Kings, it's the story of the Exodus, but it's not quite the same as the Bible one. In particular, there's the scene of the burning bush. And I kind of know the story in the Bible, so I was expecting God to start speaking. And then this toddler turns up, this little child turns up, sort of 10-year-old or something. And I thought, who's that? Well, it turns out that's God. And then God was this grumpy 10-year-old. Anyway, crazy. But then, surprisingly, talk 3 was on The Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is a great excuse for me to rewatch childhood favourite film. And The Raiders of the Lost Ark, I can say, hand on heart, is the most theologically accurate of all of those films. I mean, if you know the film, it's entirely made up, right? It's about it's an archaeologist, which is just to give him a sort of a veneer of respectability. Basically, he's a treasure hunter, but he does it in the name of archaeology. He's an archaeology professor, and he's going searching after the lost ark. Apparently it's got lost somewhere, and can we actually find this from ancient history? And so there's a scene where he does a little lecture, and he talks about it according to the Bible. It was this gold box, and etc., etc. And then they try and go and find it, and just before they find it, the Nazis find it, because it's set in 1930s, I think. And the Nazis want to use it as a secret weapon. And then there's this excellent scene, and some of you know this, it has very, very early CGI, which is, I don't know whether they did it just with bits of gold foil and stuff, but it's quite cringy CGI. But the Ark fights against the Nazis. He's captured it, and there's lasers come out of it, and then all their flesh kind of boils. It's a kind of early grotesque CGI, and they lose. And I thought, wow, that's actually exactly right. Okay, it's a fictional film, but theologically, they've got it exactly right. Here is God trying to be harnessed for human ends. Oh, yeah, we'll have him as our genie to fight our battle, as our secret weapon. That'll be handy. Yeah, I'll come to church to get God to bless what I'm going to do. Great, yeah. And then they're not expecting it to be powerful in its own right. And God destroys them. It's exactly what happens to Dagon and to Ashdod and to Gath and to Ekron. And then the pagans here, they come to really respect God, don't they? I mean, in their pagan golden mice kind of way, they're not messing about here. Like, we better send it away and honor this God. And whatever you think of the golden tumors, there's a lot of gold here, right? So they're really putting all of their riches into this honoring him somehow. But then there's a twist in the story, and it is a really quite shocking twist. The ark comes home, the cows come home, you could say, Everyone's rejoicing. Hooray, hooray, here it is again. Everything's fine. Verse 19. And he struck some of the men of Beth Shemesh. That's the Israelites. That's God's people back at home. Some of those people, because they looked upon the ark of the Lord, he struck 70 of them. And the people mourned because the Lord had struck the people with a great blow. The men of Beth Shemesh said, who is able to stand before the Lord, this holy God? It's the right question. And they should have been asking it all the way through the book, actually. But here, the sort of brutal irony of this chapter is that the pagans get it before God's people do. Like the Philistines, they realize God is powerful. We better honor him. We better tremble before him. We better atone for our guilt. But when it comes back to the church, if you like, back to Israel, people are just a bit casual. Oh, here's the ark. Oh, it's back. Oh, what's in there? And I won't do repeat Sophie's dramatic death, but 70 of them die. And the lesson of this chapter, I think, is don't mess with God. Don't treat him lightly. Don't think that because in parts of the world, Christianity is in decline. I mean, not everywhere, actually. So I've just been in East Africa, as you know, and the church there is exploding and booming. But yeah, in Europe, in cynical, post-Christian Britain, the church is declining. Don't think that God's declining. Don't think he's not powerful. He still can win. Chapter 5, chapter 6. But then also God's people need to learn the same lesson that the pagans learned the hard way. God needs to be honored and feared. He mustn't be treated casually. Who is able to stand before the Lord, this holy God? So they sent messages to the inhabitants of Kiriath Jearim saying, the Philistines have returned to the ark of the Lord. Come down and take it with you. They basically do the same thing, the same pass the parcel, just as it went from Ashdod to Gath to Ekron. The Israelites now do it. Beth Shemesh, you have it. Kiriath Jearim people, you have it. Everyone's too scared to have it with them. So the men of Kiriath Jearim came and took the ark of the Lord and brought it to the house of Abinadab on the hill. And they consecrated his son Eleazar to have charge of the ark of the Lord. From that day that the ark was lodged at Kiriath Jearim, a long time passed, some 20 years, and the house of Israel lamented after the Lord. They dishonored him. Now they're taking him seriously. Now, we don't have an ark anymore. I mean, it is the lost ark, and we don't need to go and find it, contrary to the Indiana Jones film. But we do have a holy God in our midst. And it might be that we come to church just kind of casually. Like, why did you come here today? I mean, you're welcome. I'm not saying you come for any reason. You're welcome. Nice to have you. But why did you come? Just to see mates or just enjoy refreshments and to sing? And it's a routine. That's what I've always done. And maybe just to hear the Bible taught or whatever. Or did we come before the Lord conscious that he is holy? We want him to be honored. We don't want to treat him casually. That's the lesson of this chapter. Of course, the answer to the question, who can stand before the holy God, is really nobody. Nobody safely can. I mean, Philistines can't. Israelites can't. Nobody can. The clue actually is in the ark itself. I haven't got this in my IKEA one, but on top of the ark is the atonement cover. It's the place where the blood of sacrifice was poured as they sacrificed not golden mice, but animals to symbolize the taking away of the sin of the world. And then finally, the Lord Jesus comes as the ultimate sacrifice. His blood is described as, in the book of Romans, as the atonement cover, the mercy seat, the bit of the ark where forgiveness is achieved. The propitiation, the hilasterion, in his blood. And only because of Jesus can we stand at all before the Lord in our midst. And yet even then we could say, well, I trust in Jesus, and I do so casually. No, let's make our demeanor before God one of fear and trembling and honoring. And who can stand before the Lord, this holy God? We're going to take a pause and before we pray together. And Rose, do you want to give us sort of a couple of minutes just of silence, and we'll just in our hearts come before the Lord in prayer, and then Rose is going to lead us as we pray together.